Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my! It's just another night for Supernatural Girlz. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Psychic medium Helene Olsen and paranormal researcher Patricia Baker. Here are Supernatural Girlz.
To another exciting episode of Supernatural Girlz. We're so happy that you tuned in. I am Helene Olsen, and you can find me at angelslighthouse.com. I encourage everyone to go on over and sign up for my free newsletter right on the homepage. As we announced last week, Patricia, I will be leaving the show. We have one more to do next week, and then you will be on with an exciting new co-host. Is that correct?
And that is correct. I'm coming on the air with Becky Andreasen.
Ooh.
So she will be joining the Supernatural Girlz Legacy.
Yes. And, you know, everybody needs to go over to supernaturalgirlz.com and also sign up for Patricia's weekly newsletter, which is absolutely beautiful and gives you a heads up on our upcoming guests and other important things that you need to know. Also, when you sign up at the Supernatural Girlz website, you're automatically entered into any free future giveaways. So go ahead and do it. Sign up.
Sign up and get the free stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody needs free stuff today.
Yeah, we have some great guests tonight.
Oh, my gosh, we do. We've got MICHAEL Bastine and also later on at 10 o'clock, Mason Winfield, who will join us. They are both authors of Iroquois Supernatural. So, yeah, we'll be speaking to them. Well, actually, we'll start with Mike in just a few minutes. And I also wanted to announce that on Power Preppers Radio this week on Thursday from 1 to 2, actually 1 to 2:30 now, we have a very important show, How to Survive a Home Invasion, with security expert Steve Mingus. So this is going to be a great show. I've had Steve on a couple times already talking about personal security, home security, and we were discussing a show about home invasion because apparently this is going on with great frequency. And Steve really wanted to alert everybody and give them some tips to stay safe. So please join us on Thursday, 1 to 2, and there are also some coupons and discounts and things like that some wonderful supporters of the show have offered, everything from organic wine to pepper spray. So it's got a great wide variety there. So be sure to go and visit the Power Preppers page and make use of those discount coupons. Again, more great stuff. And, of course, paranormal news, Helene. Now, last week, we were the paranormal news, and I'd like to tell everybody a little bit more about what happened when we had Ed and Marcia Becker on the show. And Ed is the author of True Haunting, and they were talking about their haunting experience, which was back in the 70s. If you guys haven't heard this show, you really need to listen to it in the archive. It is an incredibly fascinating interview with them.
It's a free archive. It's a free archive.
It's free.
People
They're
can
free.
go on. Posted on supernaturalgirlz.com, right?
Yes, and you can find it on Blog Talk. But the thing that was so really strange, wasn't it, that Helene and I heard breathing, heavy breathing, happening during this interview. And we mistakenly thought, that it was Marcia, who was just holding the phone a little too close to her nose,
her husband
right?
was talking. He was doing a bigger talk as part of the interview. And, you know, I have to preface this whole thing by saying that when we're on the radio, Patricia, sometimes we're focused on operating the radio board.
Yeah.
Instead of expecting supernatural things, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And so we're focused on, interviewing our guests and asking questions that will be insightful. And we really were just thinking sound quality when we heard that heavy breathing. And come to find out, it wasn't Marsha that was doing the heavy breathing.
No, I talked to them during the commercials, yeah. And
so you brought them into the private muted room and said, "Hey, Marsha, please don't hold that receiver so close to you.
Receiver so close to your mouth," right? And she said, just like this, "Oh, I should have told you. That happens on a lot of shows. It's not me."
And at that point, you went into super psychic mode. And please fill the audience in with the rest of the story.
Well, I just simply said to them, "Can we talk about this on air?" And they said it was fine. And then I saw the thing, so I really hit it really hard with light to get it to back off. And about 20, 25 minutes into the next segment after the commercial break, I brought up about the breathing, and I said, it hasn't been back because I whacked it with a load of light, but it might try to come back again, but right now it's gone. And they started talking about how this entity apparently said a few words on another show. And that's all on our interview. And then while they were talking and continuing the rest of the interview, in the fourth segment, the entity did try to come back, but I whacked it again, so it never came back in the air. But it was quite fascinating. Because this thing, as I told them on the air last week, it was not in their personal fields. It was just kind of having fun with them because, energy attracts. And when you're talking about negative energy, positive energy, whatever it is, something could come along and want to have a bit of fun. And that's all I got with this,
Yeah, so that it was definitely having some fun at our expense, but thank goodness you were able to send it back to wherever it came from. So I just wanted to share that with our audience tonight. So if you haven't heard that show from last week, make sure you take a listen. I mean, I actually had people coming up to me on the street that I knew that had listened to the show saying, "I knew it was an entity. I knew it was an entity last week. I was wondering when you and Helene were going to say something about it."
That is a riot. But people don't realize
funny.
what goes on in the back scene here, Yes. We're preoccupied with electronics often and paying attention to our wonderful guests, so it's not always possible to be doing all that and be psychic at the same time. So it took me a minute to catch on there, Patricia. But
and me too. And here I am blaming poor Marsha, who got blamed for everything. So with her husband in that haunted house. So thank goodness we were able to get that all straightened out. So. Anyways, but that was a very exciting show, and again, take a listen in the archives, and you'll get to hear what we heard, all that heavy breathing, and it was not a human that was doing it.
No, and their show is being broadcast on television as well, right? The film that was made about this story.
Yes, Paranormal Witness is going to be airing their show. I believe it's slated for November 9th, and it's very well worth watching. It's a very well done production. Paranormal Witness is one of my favorite shows, and they did a great job with True Haunting and Ed and Marsha's experience. And of course their book is great too, so you can pick that up on Amazon.
It was a fascinating story and a good illustration for other people to listen to because it's a true story, and it actually sort of illustrates what can happen when you're living in a place with company that you don't really want.
Yes, exactly.
Or extra residents, or however you want to put it. But it was unfortunate that these residents were not positive energy. They were very, very negative, and I got them as mentally ill and they were ghost and energy. They weren't coming from heaven to visit. They were actual human spirits. And so,
quite detrimental to whomever came in contact with them. So it was very unpleasant for them, for their tenants, and also for their relatives. So it was just all around a very difficult experience for them.
Well, we've had some crisp weather here in Massachusetts, huh, Patricia? Did it snow out your way today?
No, don't say that word.
There were flurries somewhere in upstate New York or Western Mass. I don't know, just for a few minutes or whatever, but kind of disheartening.
Don't scare me.
Yeah, kind of disheartening. But I went into Salem today, and boy, was it hopping in Salem, Massachusetts today.
I bet we're coming close to the big October 31. That place must be wild about now.
Oh, yeah. It was really packed with people, and it's nice to see the tourists returning. You know, there's a few years there where it was really thin because people just pulled their belt buckles in and didn't want to travel. So it seems like that's a little bit on the upswing, so that's really nice.
Well, that's great. And I know you were a busy bee today, so I'm glad you were able to make it onto our show tonight. And we do have some incredible guests. I mean, let's bring this guy on, MICHAEL BASTINE. He is an Algonquin Healer, Elder, and a former student of the famous Tuscarora medicine man, Wallace Mad Bear Anderson, and also Tuscarora healer, Ted Williams. So he is one of the authors of this great book that I just finished reading, Iroquois Supernatural, and he's going to enlighten us as to the legacy of the Iroquois nation and all of what the stories are. I mean, these stories really were amazing. I mean, all kinds of things I just did not expect to read in this book. Very unusual stories about witchcraft and all kinds of healings and enchanted masks and battlefields that are haunted. So let's bring MICHAEL on and let him tell the story.
Welcome, Mike. You're on the air live with Helene and Patricia.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming on.
Well, it's always a fascinating experience that people are experiencing throughout their lifetime. And it seems the longer they stay in the lifetime here, they become more fascinated with what might be or what is on the other side.
So you think as people age, they become more interested?
Absolutely.
Are you saying we're old, Mike?
No, you're not. But as we go through life, we actually, when we first get here, we are completely informed on the place that we came from. And It just seems as if the behavior seems to help or make us detach or separate from what we came into this life with. And in the native traditions, they don't typically, in the traditional ways, they don't do things that would detach us or keep us separated from the spiritual world.
Well, what is your opinion, just before we get started, about your book and so forth, what is your opinion of the amazing increase in children who are open and children who are remembering their past lives and all of the psychic and indigo young children that are here now?
Well, you're absolutely right about that. And that was actually an anticipated event that the elders had talked about probably about 30 years ago. And they would just have conversation and discussion about that next generation or these next beings that would be coming in because of the cosmic alignment. These are people who were here during the times when pyramids were being built, when technologies that typically they say can't be replicated in today's life because they just don't have the same technology. So what we do understand is there's a blending, and there has been a blending of the science and the spiritual, and that has cycled through the time. As long as the humans have been on this planet, different civilizations have left behind markers and have shown that there's been great experimentation and great exploration of blending the two, but the human is kind of an unusual character that it seems to allow certain influences to make it detach further from the life of the spiritual existence, and it seems as it does detach, it loses those abilities that were once very fluent in all the lands. And that's why we see the remnants of earthen mounds, Stonehenge, pyramids. I mean, you can just go around the planet and name them. And this country, this North America, is just loaded with all types of records and things that have been left behind, and the stories, the sharing of legends and myths. And I guess typically using terms like that, it throws a little bit of question into how valid they are. But as we go through time, I'm finding all of the legends and all of the myths do have a source of truth to them, and we just need to go back to that. And sometimes it's done in ways of meditation, but typically we have a ceremony that we ask for those insights and that information to come forward when we're ready. We have to add that little piece in there, because we've known that if we ask for certain insights or certain information, that information may cross our path as soon as we walk out of a building or take the next step somewhere. And if we're not ready, we may think that information never came our way.
That's interesting. I just have one more comment before we get started with your book, Mike. Quite some time ago, the angels had given me a teaching about retrained souls. And they told me in the last, I don't remember what the time frame was, 30, 40 years, that souls that were coming in at this time were being retrained to be more spiritual and more psychic. Do you think that's true?
It's absolutely true. And I'll tell you, it's becoming more frequent, and we are seeing it everywhere. It's not just in certain groups. It's
right
across the board. I see it in situations where I'm a little, I guess, not real strong in the academia, because I think academia has a tendency to disregard too many of these sources of information. And the academia seems to be one of the ways in which it is manipulated and used to help the human detach from the spiritual components of this life instead of helping enhance it.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate your comments. I'm just fascinated by your work, because I am not familiar with American Indian culture per se in any large extent at all. But I have seen over many years many American Indian guides for people who have Indian ancestry. And they are just some of the most remarkable spirits to talk to, because they do have a light and a connection to the cosmos all the way through their bodies and right through the planet. And it just amazes me. So I'm quite interested in hearing all about your book and everything that you've experienced as a healer, Mike.
Well, that's interesting that you have had some experience with that, because what I believe is the reason for them having that light with them is they stay connected on another level with the earth. And the earth it's a special being. It is something that is just an incredible gift that supports so much life. And actually, I've heard it referred to as a life generator. And that makes so much sense, because the life generation has to stay connected to the spirit, to the element that gives it the life force that we all refer to as sometimes the great mystery. We do understand that these forces do exist, and we also know that by staying connected to them, as we go through that process of maturing or aging, we start to change our perspective and see the purpose, the greater purpose of why that is a key to staying connected to these elements and how they will assist us, not just here, but they're designed to assist us when we go back to that place that we came from.
That's beautiful, Mike. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, this was a project that Mason had approached me with about 3 years ago, and I really didn't give it much thought or consideration when he first mentioned it, and then he started to dabble and throw a few things together, and he would show me what he had, and he said, there's just something, it's not working here. And he sat down with me and he said, you're going to have to just sit here and talk to me and tell me about the things that you experienced with these different people, because I told him the start of my life, I said I was raised Catholic. I said I went to public school. I really didn't have any connection in the first 24, 25 years of my life to the native element.
Really?
We knew we were native, but my dad was the 100% Algonquin. My mom is German, but it was not something that, I guess during the time period, it was in the 50s. I was born in 53. So it was not one of those elements that was really looked at or looked upon in any particular way. So we just kind of went through life being raised Catholic and living out in the country in a rural area. But as I got through more of the education, it's more during the college years that you start having more options available and asking more questions internally. And one of the questions that kept coming up was, is this all there is to life? Because I was working 6 and 7 days a week. I was just beating myself up on the weekends, partying with my friends. And after the party element started to kind of fade, it just kind of wore out, because you start saying, this is it. This is our purpose, and why we're on the planet is that we get an education and then we start working, and then during the early years of that life we just seemed to think that partying was the thing to do. So as that question started sinking in deeper, it started having more of a resonance, and I didn't attend church, and my dad wasn't real happy about that, and I did join a different church. He wasn't happy about that at all. So what he basically did was he thought that he could get me interested back in a church, but he found out that Mad Bear had actually lived about 45 minutes from where I grew up. So he took me up there to visit Mad Bear, and they let me read another book that Mad Bear was a big part of, was Rolling Thunder book by Doug Boyd. And Mad Bear really presented the greater part of his study and his work. It was portrayed in that book. And so when I read it, I said, it sounds too good to be true, but I'll give it a shot. I'll see what happens. And after a few visits, I started going back up there on my own, and I went back to the pastor of the church, and I said, hey, I just read this book. It was really interesting. And he asked the title, and I told him it's called Rolling Thunder, and he said, that sounds satanic to me. Well, that was the last time I went back to the church. And when I started seeing a practitioner like Mad Bear actually use the teachings and how he lived life, and I would observe having people come by from all walks of life, come by to see him and ask for his opinion or his expertise in certain areas. And I would hear the people ask questions to Mad Bear after he would explain certain things about either a ceremony or certain parts of life. They would ask Mad Bear, they go, what do you call your religion? And he said, we don't have any religion amongst the native people. He said, but we refer to the way that we example this in life. He said, we call it a way of life. And when I heard that, I said, boy, that really makes a lot of sense. Because just to believe in something but not actually practice doesn't make all that much sense to me. So when I saw it being displayed and I saw that actually happening in real life, the way he would implement these teachings, I just said, you know what, this is the thing that resonated so deep with me that it's way beyond a hobby or something that you just are very attracted to. It's a commitment. And once you accept that commitment, it's a relationship. And that relationship then is more dependent on the human than on the other side. And if the human wants these things to be able to manifest and become a part of this life, you have to maintain a certain code of ethic, a certain way of life in order for this to be responding to you and for you to be able to use it in a manner where you can see that it will help and it does help. So we don't really make the predictions of saying, well, I know if I do this, this will be the outcome. But we do know that if we take some action and we do it in accordance and in alignment with the way the cosmos says, will give you the best opportunity to have that success, to have that outcome that we are looking for. That's when you start to see it exampled through different implementation of preparation using certain herbs, doing things that are on certain moon phases, waiting for, again, we're all experiencing this time of the year when the growing season has come to an end, and typically the energy that was once in the trees and the plants, the birds were all here singing a few weeks ago, they're all quieting down, they're all preparing for this time when they say it's your time to rest. But during that time, we also understand that it's the time for us to explore and go beyond the physical life and see what resides in the darker parts of life. And when we use the word darker, it doesn't mean that it's evil or bad. It just means those are solemn or sacred. And we understand that those things are necessary many times to bring certain elements in. And as you have kind of made a reference to earlier about blasting things with light, those are the things that we like to bring into the light and say, if it is truly something that is for the highest good of all life, then it will remain here and we'll be able to work with it. If it is something other than that, it won't come back. It'll go away. So those are basically the things that we understand and the times of the year that we look forward to or we prepare for to say, here's what we need to do now, and the cosmos is providing us this time, and this is what we know that we do during that time. So as we see, Halloween was not a big season of the times of the native people a few hundred years ago, but it was a time when we did make preparations along similar lines, when we knew that these beings, they seem to come closer to us. They seem to be right around the corner or just over our shoulder. And they're not necessarily things there that should be frightening to us, but they should be things that are coming closer to us to help us go deeper and beyond during the non-growing season. So those distractions, and that's basically what we see, is the time when stories would be told, the time when legends would be recounted, was during the winter. And the winter was a time of when you recounted your history and you told about the stories and the times. And they said because the storytellers were so good, they were so entertaining, that there's actually a legend that talks about one time a storyteller kept telling the legends and the stories well into the spring. And they said the area that he would tell the stories, he said nothing was growing. And the people came up and they said, what's going on? How come the spring is not returning? And one of the medicine people said, it's because the storyteller, he tells such great stories that even the plants and the life around it becomes interested, and it neglects what it should do, which is grow. It should start entering into the next season. So they have legends and stories like that which tell us we should be using that time when things aren't growing to be sharing these stories and sharing that information and teaching about these things.
Well, I have one more question. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Helene.
I was going to say, it seems to me that you sort of became spiritually awakened at a younger age than many other people do, and I'm just wondering briefly if you think that it was your ancestors calling to you or someone whispering in your ear to go in this direction.
You know, that's a very interesting observation, and it's one that I really didn't take a look at, but as you mentioned ancestors, it just clicked, and you are absolutely right that the ancestors, and I've made this remark more recently about in that part of life with the legends of the ancestors and our ancient ones and the spirit guides, they want us to flourish here. They really want us to do well.
Yes, and they do, and they seem to want American Indians to return to their legacy.
Yes, because
even if they're not fully American Indians, even if they're partly, even if half or a little less than half of the ancestry is American Indian.
Sure, like even if they're a reincarnation of a time when they once were. Mm-hmm. Those are the connections that say you finally made that connection to, and that's what it is. It's connecting the dots. It's saying once you make this and hold that connection, we don't want you to turn from it or have it taken away or detached from it again, because this holds the keys. And actually, when we start to see the structure of what the Iroquois people had, and I say had only because the legacy that they once had was an incredible, revered system throughout the world, and it was a matriarchal system. So we knew back then, and I say we as if I'm Iroquois or part of the 5 or 6 nations now. I'm not. I'm Algonquin, which is a different group of people. But because my influence came from the Iroquois and came from people like Mad Bear, I saw what an incredible gift that group of people contributed to this life, because they're the ones that had the words that made the reference to the structure of leadership that said, this is a system for the people, by the people. And when you turn that kind of responsibility onto the people, then they have to select those, and it was the women that selected the leadership. It was not an elective system. It was the women who observed these young men growing up and seeing how their nature and their character was, how they interacted. And you almost seem to have to display a very good understanding of the spiritual realm and use that in a balanced way to help you make good decisions and stand up calmly and firmly to the issues and the situations that were trying to cause problems for these people. So the matriarchal part, the native part. That's why they did so well, is they followed those traditions and those teachings. And, when I had lots of questions, and when Mad Bear I'd hear people come to him and talk to him about the teachings and the traditions, and I asked him, I said, why? I said, why did the Iroquois follow a matriarchal system? And he said, it's simple. He says, you never confuse who your mother is. He said, but there's always some doubt to who the father might be. So because of that, the land title, the clan, the lineage of the nation, it all descended on the woman's side. And I said, it makes sense. I said, now I understand. I said, these are great teachings which I think we need to share with more of the establishments out there so that they see the purpose and the reasoning behind why these systems, why they worked and why they were followed. And when we see, I'm going to admit, when we see the problems and the troubles that we have these days, there's too many men calling the shots. And they're uninformed men. They're not men that are connected in a spiritual way. They're men that are highly political, very wealthy, and they have a tendency to just keep the system that supports them in place. And that's changing, though. We're all going to see that in our lifetime. We will definitely see the cosmos take some measures, and I'm going to say in the next 2 years are probably going to be the most exciting times and see the most changes for the system to get reformed. It certainly is up to the humans to take that responsibility, but I don't see them coming forward and taking those actions right now. So it is certainly, I guess when we refer to the cosmos or to the natural world, there is just an incredible supernatural spirit in this element that wants this life to flourish. It wants us to do well, and it did do well eons before. That's why we see the remnants of the structures around the planet, and it says, geez, how did they do that? Well, most likely I would say under a matriarchal system, following the alignments of the energies, and you say, here's how we're supposed to live this life, and these are the people who will help us, which are the women. So again, when I saw on the website, you guys, how you portray this, it makes perfect sense to me. It really did an alignment thing with me where I said, wow, that's just the way the Iroquois people had lived lives and structured their communities and their people to be of the matriarchal system. And that's why they call it Mother Earth. That's why they refer to the moon as grandmother, because these are the entities of the feminine, and the feminine energy is what reproduces life. That's what brings the life to its place.
Well, Patricia,
I like what you're saying. This is great.
Fantastic. Great. Would you like to continue right now, or should I take time for a break?
Let's take a little break and come back. I know I have a million questions for Mike, and I know he's got a lot to say. Still, we have yet to really get into the subject of this book. So, yeah, let's take a short break. If you have a question for Mike, please call in at 646-478-0828. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Ready for a new experience of freedom and powerful connection? Would you like a positive, effortless change in your life? Then come to CosmicFusion.com, where we offer the most advanced energy clearing and expansion techniques in the world, with a quantum vortex energy to activate your divine blueprint and life's purpose. When your soul leads the way with cosmic fusion and quantum vortex energy, you can break clear of past difficulties and blocks with the power of the Source. With cosmic fusion, the Source energy does the work for you. It's easy and effortless. Listen to our free meditation right from our Cosmic Fusion website, the Cosmic Code Meditation. Sign up for one of our interactive webinars today. Come to Cosmic Fusion, www.KOSMICfusion.com, to experience an effortless awakening and transformation. Are you ready for an upgrade? Are you ready for a new experience of living in the fifth dimensional magic and powerful connection? Then visit CosmicFusion.com today. CosmicFusion.com.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Available on Amazon.com.
Sometimes life can be a challenge. Would you like insight and guidance to help you make the best choices right now? Contact Helene at angelslighthouse.com to make your personal appointment for a psychic reading or energy alignment. Helene is a direct channel to the angelic realm and is remarkably capable of connecting to the living as well as to your loved ones on the other side. Helene is available to clients all over the world via phone or Skype, and it's simple to set up a group reading anywhere. Visit angelslighthouse.com, where you'll find an easy way to schedule right online. And while you're there, sign up for the Angels Lighthouse newsletter and receive information on all the free energy circles, giveaways, and jewelry with a message. Visit angelslighthouse.com and contact Helene today.
Fascinating show. We're talking to MICHAEL Bastine, one of the authors of the book Iroquois Supernatural. So, Patricia, you had some questions for Mike.
Yeah, Mike, you were lucky enough to be an apprentice, or study, I should say, with Mad Bear Anderson, who was just one of the most amazing elders and healers in this country. And how did that come to be? I mean, how did he accept you? Because I know that Native American elders and medicine men and women don't just take anybody. So what happened that allowed you to that inner circle?
Well, you're right about that. And they even don't accept people over extended periods of time because they want to observe not only who you are, but they want to see you actually display some of what you think you may be or what you can do. But as long as you do that in a respectful way, in a way in which you show them that you kind of have a great not only interest but insight to how to use some of the tools that they use. And when I say tools, it's how you use certain plants. And sometimes taking a pinch of sacred tobacco and leaving it in a location means that you're leaving a doorway or a marker there. So what happened with Mad Bear is I would observe most of the time. And there would be a few occasions if I had a small pad of paper and I would start writing things down. And Mad Bear didn't say anything right away. But after a few months, he saw that I was jotting some things down on this paper. And he said to me, he goes, "What are you writing down?" And I said, "Things that sound like they're really important and that I should keep them available." And he asked me, the next question was, "Is there something wrong with your brain?" And I never had a question asked to me like that before. And I said, "I don't think so." And he said, "Then use it." He said, "The more you use it, the better it will work for you." So it made sense. Yeah, really, because they have an oral tradition.
Right.
They typically don't like to write things down. And he said, if it's that important, he said, and you lost that piece of paper, he said, then what? And I said, you've got a great point. So it was through experiences like that he saw that I was willing to understand and ask questions and be respectful. And I'm going to say it took a good 2 or 3 years before he actually started to make remarks to me about we need to go out and take a walk and look at some plants. And that was something that I always held within me, and I didn't want to ask because it seemed that would be out of place, almost being too forward. So he saw my nature, and he saw the character that was there, and that it was not just a flash in the pan. And some of the guys that I would see come in for a few months, and then you wouldn't see him again for another few months. He saw that this was a commitment. This was something that I knew would not only help me, but it would help me help others. And that's what I really learned from all of this experience, is that the system that we're dealing with right now, because of it, has the paternal essence and element amongst it so strongly still. When people go to the doctor, if they had to get a stitches in their cut, the doctor will call them back and take the stitches out if they're not dissolving, and then he would look at that and he would say, "Wow," he says, "I did a real nice job." And what the doctor should be letting the people know is what a great job they did. They are the ones that healed that. And that's just a minor example. You know, this was the introduction to when Mad Bear, I got the sense now that he was looking for someone that he could not only trust, but entrust these things to, because he said, if they're sacred, he said, and we don't treat them as if they're sacred, the sacredness goes away. And then you lose. All you have now is a story. And you don't have the essence of living the life that brought the sacredness to life, that said, here's how we do that. So I observed Mad Bear and how he implemented the teachings, and he did live the teachings. He didn't just talk about them. I saw him use that in every instance of interaction of life. So by observing that, I started to see that we're here to observe in the early stages of our life. We're here to observe and learn from that. And then we're supposed to take that as we go through life. And as it grows with us, so many things have started to surface that I could never have imagined during the time period that I was traveling with Mad Bear, because for whatever reason, we just don't have that ability to make those connections. But as I started to look back at several events, I started to see the purpose and the reason why Mad Bear did what he did, and there were people who would accuse him from time to time of being a witch, of using witchcraft, and, you know, in all of my observations, Mad Bear didn't. He never used witchcraft, but I did see something that I said, what a clever and incredible smart man that he was, because it was not really known when people would observe things that he did. We had a gathering of people at his house, and they were having difficulties because someone was infiltrating the inner circles of the elders, and they were complaining to Mad Bear about harassment, and he said, let me look into it. And when he did that, I just recently pieced this together and came up with what at the time I didn't think anything of. But he asked a group of us that happened to be visiting at Mad Bear's house, he said, you know, he says, I need your help, but he said, we're going to have this little ceremony. And he says, if you are willing to participate, he said, you need to spend the night. And he said, there's going to be some unusual events during the night. He said, if you hear a voice at the door that you recognize, he said, you don't answer it. He said, you don't answer it with your voice, and we don't open the door. He said, and all the windows were covered with a black cloth. And he said, we won't discuss anything, and he says, we don't open anything up until sunrise. And he said, if you hear anything that's really disturbing, he said, I'll probably already be awake. And he said, and I'll take care of it. So during the night, sure enough, it sounded like somebody walking across the roof of his house, and sounds that I can't even describe. It was a squeal and a squawk and just sounds that made no sense to me. And yet it was almost a voice that Mad Bear was recognizing. He almost knew what it was saying. Now, when someone had asked me, they said, what was the medicine that he used? And I told them. And they didn't say anything right away. But later on, they said to me, they go, that was witchcraft. And I said, no. I said, Mad Bear, he wasn't a practitioner of that. I said, I always saw him do things that were helpful to people. And later on, I had it confirmed again, and they said that was witchcraft. So what came of this was he found out the name of the individual. After we went out to Oklahoma, he heard the voice, and he saw the person, and he said, that's the infiltrator. Now, at that time, this is 30 years ago, I really didn't know how to piece things together. But just recently, I started looking back at that, and I said, you know, he did use that medicine, and that they do refer to that as witchcraft. But what he was doing and what he needed to do is he couldn't do this on his own, because when you summon in these elements that can overpower you, and he knew that. He knew that he needed help, but he didn't let us know that he was just going to use us in the sense of saying, I need the collective. I need willing practitioners or helpers, without knowing that we were in practice or helping, but he just needed us to be there to support what he was doing. And what he had done, what I figured out just recently, is that he was calling in to expose the elements that they use with that witchcraft to summon that element, but he needed the support of having other people around him. Just saying that we were willing to participate to help him was enough of the collective that connected us, that now Mad Bear could do this safely without getting himself into trouble. And the elements that were there knew he had all of us participating with him to work on that, like when you say to someone, the power in you, and the power in you, and the power in you, when we bring it all together, the collective, it's not just 3 individuals. Now it's 3 times 3 times 3. And the exponential element that we start to tap into protected Mad Bear from having any repercussions. When we went to Oklahoma, he identified the individual, and he told Doug Boyd, he said, this is the person who's infiltrating, and he said, she happens to be a practitioner, but she's using the dark side. So when they found that out, they avoided giving her the information that was being bothersome to some of those elders. That's just one example of how I saw Mad Bear use these things. I said, how incredible smart is that, to use the element to draw that witchcraft part out into the open so that it would expose itself so he could identify who was connected to it. And I said, it's just so incredible when I look back and see the things that he actually did, and then not knowing all of this information that I'm revealing now, that it was always there, and the man was just, he was premier of the top of the top. In fact, in Rolling Thunder's first book that he put out, A Message to Turtle Island, Rolling Thunder, he even states in his book, he said, Mad Bear was his greatest teacher that he ever met. And when I read that, now Mad Bear was considerably younger than Rolling Thunder, and when I read that, I said, wow. I said, I knew Rolling Thunder held Mad Bear in great esteem and he really respected him, but I never knew that he referred to him as one of his better teachers. So when you start to hear it from older medicine people looking at Mad Bear at the time that he was a much younger man, that tells me that he was something of a great magnitude of this element, and I have never seen Mad Bear get stumped on a situation where he could not come up with an answer or find a way to come up with an answer to a situation. So just having these experiences back then were the things that not only intrigued me, but I said, I did have concerns back then about possibly getting in over my head, but I don't anymore, because the time and the life teaches us when we know, when we use our other senses, that say, better to avoid this one, or this is a good one, go ahead, get involved.
Well, you are so blessed to have worked with this amazing medicine man, and I only had occasion to speak to him once on the phone, and I remember it to this day as if it was yesterday. I mean, the power that came through the phone lines just speaking to him. I should say I wasn't really speaking to him. I was listening. And he was telling me about the moon rocks. And
Yep.
He was very concerned. He said, we have no business bringing things here from other planets. And he said those moon rocks are growing.
Yeah, it's amazing that you said that. That flashed through my mind about 45 minutes ago. And I wasn't going to bring it up because most people go, oh, that's crazy. How could that happen?
It's not. I'm glad that you can speak to this, because I was just in rapt attention of everything he was saying about these moon rocks that were growing, and they were growing so big and at such a rate that they couldn't contain them. The scientists couldn't contain them.
They were breaking through the cases.
Right. That's what he was saying to me. And I mean, I was just sitting there listening to, hanging on his every word as he continued to speak about this. And one of the things that really touched me about Mad Bear in that conversation was his true concern for people on this planet. I mean, he really had a passion for wanting to help people, as you said. And it came through in every word he said, in everything he did. And I could see that just from that brief conversation I was lucky enough to have with him that one day, So please tell us the rest of the story about these moon rocks. That's amazing.
Well, the call came in from a friend of his from the Pentagon, and it was a colonel who knew Mad Bear had been involved with a lot of the elements within the teachings and the traditions. See, the teachings aren't just how to make a drum or how to sing a song, or the teachings go way beyond that, and they actually help us understand that certain elements should not be brought into other realms without the proper precaution or ceremony leading into it. Because when they just take these actions for the sake of science or whatever other reasoning they may put on that, the consequences can be just devastating. So the call, and I remember Mad Bear talking to this, and he was very concerned. And Mad Bear told him, he says, I would come down there, but he said, I don't feel safe having to deal with elements that don't belong here. And he said, what I will do is I will have a ceremony, and I'll ask some friends that would join in. These would be other medicine people. And the people that he would refer to, these were really well-experienced elder people. And he would ask them to confer first and give the scenario of seeing what was going on and see what their responses were. And he would say either conclusively, yes, he said, we are in all of this agreement that we need to take some action. And he said, short of sending them back to the moon, he said, we have to find some middle ground that we can access these elements and ask them the permission, even though it's already too late to ask before you bring it, they're already here. But he said, that is part of what you do, is you go back to and you go through and perform the ceremony that would be typically done before you ask permission to bring things into this realm. But he said, we will do that. And he said, and I think that we will have success. He says, I think that we will get these elements to calm down, and they won't have negative repercussions on not only the people who brought them here, but on the facilities where they have them stored. And he said, it's a major concern when you start to bring things in through unnatural means. So I know what he was getting at. When humans think that this is what they should be doing, he said they don't look beyond the event to see what the consequences or the probability or possibility of consequences that can come from interacting with events like that. So, when you mentioned moon rocks, I said, oh, boy. I said, here's a story that most people, and I would say even 30 years ago, I probably never repeated that story because people would think I was crazy.
Well, I'm not clear that the audience understands. Why did the Pentagon call Mad Bear? What was going on with the rocks exactly?
The rocks were moving without anyone touching them, and they were growing. They were actually getting larger. They weren't huge rocks to begin with, but they were breaking through the cases, and that was the description that they were telling Mad Bear is what was happening. So he told them, he said he would contact these other people. Then they would have a conference of sorts, but they would take action. They would have a ceremony and have offerings for the moon rocks, because he said they haven't. He said this is the unfortunate part of this life, is that many times science will do things without looking beyond that event. And even I'll tell you, when the moon project started, these guys were having ceremonies asking permission for them to walk on that land, because he said he knew no one else would ask permission. And he said it needs to be done because we don't want them bringing anything back that may cause harm to the life on this planet. He said if those things were meant to be here, they would be here. But he said because they're going there and they're saying this is in the name of research or education, granted, you know, you love to see research and education, but when it's going to a different planet or a different realm, there's reasons why there's barriers between us and why they stay separated. But when you start to introduce things not only from here to there, they had a ceremony asking that permission so that these things would not be problematic. They would not have repercussions in the future that would be things that could not be stopped. There are certain activities and things that I've heard conversation about, and one of them was they wanted to know why the native people were tolerating so much bad treatment from the government. And they said, you know, there was people who would come to these medicine people and they would say, you have the ability, and they would tell the Hopis and the Navajos and the different nations out west, you have that ceremony. Why don't you use it? And the response was, what would happen if we did our ceremony to create some of these events to happen, and then we couldn't stop them? What if those events would continue to escalate out of control because we had opened the door and initiated and started that action? And that made so much sense to me that I said, wow, these are people who have such constraints and restraints on themselves to say, yes, we could do that, but we also know the harmful part of that. And do we all agree or know that when we do certain actions that there is another energy attached to that with consequences? They call it karma. So they knew not to take things into their hands that may say, well, we have that ability, let's do it. Let's unleash some of these elements on that established. No, we're here to learn. And they also wanted people to understand that we're not here to harm any of this life, even if it's doing things that are interfering with the way that we understand and believe how the planet should be treated, how this life should be taught to the next life, next generation coming in. And the roles that the women not only had, but need to take back and say, ladies, here's why we support you. The men are supposed to stand behind the lady and back her up and stand with her, not over her, not taking these controls that the women have no idea what they're doing. This is why, and they refer to it as a man's world. I'm going, boy, if they really knew, if the men would really find out how and what type of consequences that they are initiating to the life here. And this is why it was so important to integrate the culture, the teaching, and see how the practitioners use that with great restraint, but with the use of saying it's for the good of all life, not just the human. All life
Thank
needs
you.
benefit.
That is remarkable. You're so eloquent, really, Mike. But right now we have Mason Whitfield on the line, Patricia.
All right.
I see he is joining us. This is exciting, and now we get the other half of the authorship for this book, Iroquois Supernatural.
And where can people get that book?
Right on Amazon.com.
Yep. Most of the bookstores still have some copies, but I know Amazon has been a great provider. Most people can get it there, and we do still have a few copies from the first printing available at the publisher, so it is been a very popular book, and I think the people who have read it I've been getting responses because I don't have, and typically don't have a website or an email, but I asked permission. I was fortunate enough to get on Coast to Coast a couple of weeks after the book was released, and I asked the publisher if I could give out the contact information for the people to contact Inner Traditions Bear and Company, and that they would forward any information, whether it would be a letter written or an email, and it worked. It was fine. Because I told them I didn't want to cause disruption in my home and the house for my family. So I said if we could handle it that way, and they were very good about it. In fact, I'm still getting responses these days. In fact, that's, I think, how we got contacted from you guys, was through the publisher.
Yes, that's right. It was through your through Manzanita Carpenter, who's just been wonderful at giving us great guests for this exciting show. And again, the book, Iroquois Supernatural, is terrific. I read it today, and it is rich with stories and unexpected events that are a pleasure to read. So I highly recommend your book. Well worth the read. It's very entertaining, very informational, and just filled with great stuff. You won't be able to put it down. Great time of year to read it too, as we're getting so close to Halloween. So let's. What should we do, Helene?
The show is going
in front of us.
Quickly. The show is going so quickly, and we have a caller from Texas who's been waiting so patiently on the line. I hope that he holds on, because I want to get his question, but Mason is also being patient, so we're going to bring Mason Whitfield on right now. Hello, Mason. You're live on the air.
Uh-oh, I'm getting nervous already.
Hi, Mason.
Hey, it's first of all, I'm honored to be on, but second of all, I've been listening for about 10 minutes, and I once again am admiring my choice of co-author.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This no charge, Mike. This guy is the real deal.
Mm-hmm.
And there aren't a lot of real deals left, I have to tell you, when it comes to, I believe, what he embodies here, Native American tradition and the tradition of a medicine man. So I agree with you, Mason.
Yeah, Mike is, he's one of the great, in my opinion, he's one of the great mystics of his generation. And I'm, of course, very honored to have him as a friend and to have been working with him. And there may be a little bit more ahead for him and for me.
That's great. And you are an historian and with 9 books under your belt, right?
Well, actually 10, and I'm sort of a supernatural historian. There's the ghost business is full of these fake titles, and I'm a demonologist and that kind of stuff. And I really try to title myself the bare minimum of what I might be or do. But I read books, I write books, I listen to people, I talk to people. That's a description of my profession.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful profession to have, and certainly, again, I can't compliment you both enough on this book. It's really worth the read. It's a great read, very entertaining, and like I said, very informational. You both did an excellent job.
Thank you.
So should we bring on our question here, Helene? Let this poor man ask his question.
Okay, we're welcoming Constantine from Texas. You are live on the air, Constantine. Do you have a question for Mike or Mason?
I don't know exactly if the gentleman is my elder or not, but I think I'll err in caution and give the elders greetings. So anyway, I'm part Native American, and I had actually, well, first of all, when I was young, well, of course I'm still young, I'm only in my 40s, but when I was young, my father and I believe, met this person's mentor, but interesting. But anyway, the reason I was calling is because I had a question if I might benefit from a pearl of wisdom or two.
Sure.
Well, here the thing is I do a lot of narrations and I do a lot of voiceovers and character voices and things like that. And of course, I'm a spiritual person. The problem I've had is, a man is what he does, and sometimes you follow your gifts. And I've taken jobs that before because, I just see it from a practical standpoint, whether I particularly agree with whatever I'm saying. If you do radio, it's a job. It's not a personal thing, you might do an advertisement for something that you probably wouldn't personally ever use, whether it was because you wouldn't use it or because of some moral reason or something like that. But where I'm going with this is I've really enjoyed over the years, doing First Nations storytellings and stuff like that. And I've been told more than once to be really careful about, no matter what culture it is, when you tell, well, for some reason I get a lot of requests to do the spooky voice kind of thing. And I'm not necessarily, I believe to some degree you make your own luck. But I've just, when I do certain kinds of readings, I just have bad luck. And I don't necessarily believe in luck, but then again, something happens to you 5, 6, 7, 8 times. It's something that's kind of hard to, disregard also, and I was kind of wondering, maybe if you had any insights for me, any thoughts about that?
Well, typically what we see happen is when we take on, even if we call it a job, or we take on doing something that takes us out of who your natural character is. Typically, I've been asked many times to portray or do something, and I excuse myself, and I can't do scripted work. I said I have to allow the place where that information comes from to let it flow. And I said, if you want it scripted, I said, go hire an actor. I said, this is not what I typically get involved with. I said, I want to follow what my true nature and my character is, because that's what resonates with the life.
Yeah.
So to take on a job that, you change character, if it brings about certain events or things that can be viewed as bad luck, maybe I would start documenting and logging things and saying, correlation-wise, these are not things that are helpful, even though we say it's the practical part of life that I have to have a job and I have to do certain things. I agree that that's true, but some of the jobs, I guess we need to look at closely enough to say, I can't cross that line, because it does bring about certain elements down the road that I just don't want to deal with.
And that's an excellent answer, and I think just to add to that, I'll say that don't you think, Mike, that if you're a spiritual person and you're crossing the line into something that's not for everybody's highest good, that you're creating an energy connection there?
Absolutely, and it does have consequences. You may not see them immediately respond, but it will respond. And those are the things that even in preparation to say, well, let's see, tomorrow I think I'm going to act like a jerk for half an hour. I'm going to make preparations for that. When you cross the line, you cross the line. And there's no getting around it. This is the stuff that, unfortunately, the language seems to be able to forgive, to say, well, just act like a jerk for a little while and then just say you're sorry. It's an intentional violation of the respect of how we treat the life around us, and there's no excuse for it. So we just have to opt out. We have to excuse ourselves from that and realize that that is the higher choice. That is the better part of life for everybody. So when we hold those connected values, that's why I say just watch nature. These were the things that Mad Bear impressed on me. watch nature. Nature has no evil. Evil didn't exist until the human came on board. And it's because the human has the ability to use free will. Free will is nothing more than saying, I know better, but I also have that ability to do what's not right, and I'm going to do it this time. And that's what happens with the human. So I usually ask the question, will nature do okay without the human? Absolutely. Will the human do okay without nature? Not for a moment. So when the situation is established the way it is, it would make more sense to me to help teach the people. This is a very sacred place we're on. It is what they call Mother Earth. It is something that we need to keep included daily with our acknowledgement to say, boy, am I grateful that the earth keeps renewing the air and renewing the waters and the cycles of change and rebirth. And all of these things are a part of this life, and what a sacred experience that it is turning out to be.
Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Constantine, for the question. We appreciate you listening to Supernatural Girls and calling in. And Mason, what is the most impressive story that you can share with the audience right now that's in the book Iroquois Supernatural? It's available on Amazon.com.
Oh, wow. I hate to say that the book has a number of inspiring stories. Well, we're getting pretty close to Halloween. And, you know, for the Celtic people of Europe, the Irish, the Scottish, the Welsh, and if you're going to go back 2,500 years, just about everybody in Northwest Europe. No, for the Celtic people, Halloween was a time when the boundaries between the natural world and the supernatural world were loosened. So on Halloween night, the supernaturals can get into the world, and we can occasionally drift over into their realm. The human dead, the family dead, were likely to come back and visit with us. But a lot of other things were likely to drift over on Halloween night, too. Halloween was typically a night of the fairies. I mean, Irish and Scottish folklore and legend is dominated by the tales of these otherworldly beings. Some of them are small, they're diminutive, they're magical, and some of them are human-sized. But, the Iroquois people have legends of the fairies. They don't call them that, but they're little people. They're the Jugao. And I would say some of the more impressive stories I get, certainly the scarier ones, involve children and their encounters with little people.
So these are not enchanting stories. These are scary stories? With the little people? Uh-oh.
I hate to tell you, yes. I mean, everywhere the little people are found in world tradition, and they are found in many different parts of the world, but everywhere the little people are reported, they are associated with three things. They are associated with the cycles of nature. They live in the woods. They don't live in the village. They live in the woods. They help cycles of nature turn. They help the plants flourish. They help the seasons happen.
Are you talking about what we refer to as nature spirits?
They would certainly fit that loose description. The little people are also associated with the human dead. It's not as if when you die you become a fairy, but it's sort of like the human dead and the fairies kind of exist within the same realm. They kind of know what each other are doing. But the third thing that the little people are always associated with, they're associated with human children. They are interested in children. They appear to children. They sometimes protect children, and sometimes they're not so protective.
Really? So that's a surprise to me. Now, do you have a story you could tell us that is about that? About how children were...
Oh, I would say probably 10.
Wow.
But, yeah, and there's zillions more out there that I just haven't been told. But what I can tell you is, upstate New York, Iroquois territory, a lot of the landscape tradition has been lost. And one of the things I've tried to do is to recover what's recoverable and document it. And Mike undoubtedly knows tons more than I do, and a lot of he won't even tell me because, he's a protector. If it's private and it's protected for the nation, he won't tell me, and I respect that. But there is some stuff that has been documented. And I have noticed that in upstate New York, I'm basically a ghost guy. People come to me with ghost stories. They come to me for interpretation. They come to me for clarity. They come to me just with an interesting story. And I did notice that there's a very odd apparition category that I will get. And people will sometimes be describing often what they think are ghosts. But then when you get down to the details of the experience and you ask them exactly, what color was it, what shape, what form, how did it appear, how did it disappear, how big was it, pretty soon you realize that some people who think they're discussing ghosts are talking about little people. And a lot of them are white. And they don't have any reason to want to make up a story. They don't want anybody to think they're crazy. But yet they've seen these very small human-style apparitions. But the trick is, these apparitions are very often associated with exactly either the kinds of places or the places that our Iroquois predecessors would have said, well, oh yeah, that's where the little people hang out. There is this odd kind of a cross-cultural sympathy in supernatural folklore, at least in the parts of New York State that I've studied. I think I scared everybody.
We're all hanging on your every word here, Mason. We want to know what these little people have been doing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, guys. I tell these stories so often, particularly this time of year. Well, let's just put it like this. The imaginary friend is a syndrome that is rather well known to psychology, mainstream psychology. And sometimes they stress the definition to include a personified toy. As far as I'm concerned, if a kid has a teddy bear and they give it a name, that is not a manifestation of the imaginary friend syndrome, but yet sometimes they consider it that way. But I'm talking about situations where children have really young ones, like 3, 4, 5. They can't read, they're barely able to talk, and they've got a friend. And nobody else seems to be able to see the friend. The friend is either invisible to others or it's very elusive. But the friend comes to see them. The friend sometimes gives them information. Sometimes the friend tries to lure them into the woods. Maybe the friend comes to them in dreams. These are sometimes dramatic stories. And very often the human being, you have to catch them when they're 4 or 5 if you can interview them live. Because most people, when they're 8 or 10, they don't remember much from when they were 4 or 5. You very often get these stories from the family. But I find it so interesting that when I do get stories like this of the imaginary friend is almost always the size of the child. Okay, the child is 4, That's about, 3 feet high? 2 feet high? These are little people they're seeing so much of the time. And they're associated with old battlefields. They're associated with powerful, ancient, sacred sites. They're associated with special places in the landscape. I just sort of look at it as a profiler, and I find this a very interesting scenario.
Well, it is an interesting scenario, but most of the stories I have to say that I've heard about this, people have had encounters, and they do remember them with little people when they were children, is that they were pleasant, and they felt that these wee people were friends of theirs. So I have yet to hear anything where these fairies, little people, nature spirits, whatever you want to call them, are in some way threatening to children. But are you saying that you have heard stories about that?
I am saying, yeah, I have.
Well, I have to agree with you, Mason. No, I have to agree with you, Mason, because in my experience with all these things and all these entities and energies around the planet and beyond the veil, or however you want to put it, there is positive and negative. And so the vast majority of fairies, little people, nature spirits, however you want to categorize them that I've seen, are helpful and kind. But then there's an element there where there are fairies who are not nice. And there are fairies and many other nature spirits who actually cross into the other side of actually trying to taunt and grab the power of humans. And they do
as Mike,
and
as Mike would tell you, there's a couple of categories of little people now, and I think they might be stereotyped as tricksters and healers. And Mike has given me some great stories. One of Mike's great friends, Ted Williams, maybe Mike should tell this story, but they're not all good. Mike, you want to handle that one?
Yeah, that story centers around one of the acquaintances, a young man that Ted knew and I knew. He's still around. He's a member of a society that they call the Little Water. It can be referred to as Dark Water, but these are societies that exist. They're not secret, they are sacred, and they will talk about them, but very cautiously. And one of these members of this society, he had gone through a time what we experience, or what we call and celebrate, is midwinters. And it's in the dead of winter. It's usually the end of January, or sometimes, and it's based on the moon phase, so sometimes it slides into February. But he was at one of the society member meetings that they had during the midwinters, and they do, at these midwinters, they do so many different functions. One of them that we've talked about or is in the book, the false faces. They feed the false faces. These are beings that are living. But these other people meet also, and they are members of societies that are in touch with and have interest with the little people. And they actually get interactions from the little people. And that as they bring them in and they have their meeting place and ceremonies, the little people actually told this young man, he said, "Be careful." He said, "We're not all good." And he shared that story with Ted, and Ted got a kick out of it, because he said, as we know in life, not everything is good. And to say that everything is pure, everything is light, we are living in duality. And the duality is a part of the balance. And the balance is that we learn how to interact with the duality. And the duality is the physical and the non-physical. And there are many components to the non-physical that we just still have a hard time understanding and sharing with people, because we will get looks like you're crazy. And that time is fading, though, that more people are becoming aware that it's not craziness, it is a resurgence or a realignment of the energy. This is what the timing of what they referred to last year as the Mayan calendar. It's not by any chance that it happened to come to an end, and it's not an end. It was a cycle that finished up. We are entering into the new cycle, and the new cycle is introducing these components that say, let the people who are not afraid of working with these elements work with the cosmos to realign these energies, that we will have incredible experiences, and that this is for the good of all life. So yeah, the little people, they are real things. They are very included with the ceremony. And it was kind of interesting, Mason, that you recalled the story that they let Ted know. They said, yeah, we're not all good. So that comes right from the mouths of the little people.
Wow. So you're right, though. There is duality in everything, so that makes sense. And, Helene, it makes sense what you said as well. One of the stories, one of the chapters, actually, that was quite lengthy in your book was about these masks. And it really caught my attention, this one story about how Ted Williams was called to get rid of a mask that they thought was just a five and dime type of mask, but they found out it was a living mask. And can you talk about that a little bit, you guys? Because this is something that is unusual and not talked about very often. But these masks are really objects of power.
Hey, Mike, can I take this one for the first 30 seconds?
Sure, go ahead.
I think what I am instructed is that the biggest difference in masks is whether it's ever been used in a ceremony. If it's had its eyes opened, if it's been used in a ritual, it has become energized. It is powerful. And if any of our listeners happens to have one of those things, especially one that's been used in a ceremony, call up the Iroquois Nation and give it back. It is a powerful item. You don't want to have it around. Maybe I should let Mike go from here on.
Yeah, the reference to when people use the label or term mask, typically that's referring to an artifact that has not been used in ceremony. If they refer to it as a false face, that typically means that it was used in ceremony, and once it's used in ceremony, it has gone through the midwinters, which Mad Bear had 2 false faces, which they become living entities. They will work with you, but you have to take very good care of them. And the one was this red wooden face mask, and the false face had a nose that twisted off to the side. And the name of that one, they call it Hot Dewey. And the Hot Dewey was a protector. There's a legend that, we just don't have time to go into the whole stories behind it, but the Hot Dewey is one that actually challenged the Creator in the early stages of its existence, and it finally became humbled, and the Creator gave it permission to stay on the planet. But the Hot Dewey is one that the native peoples here, all the Iroquois people, hold on to as this is the most powerful protector, powerful healer. It is the key to the false face societies. It is the one that is the leader in that realm of the false faces. So they do take it into the ceremony at midwinters, and they make up a mixture of the traditional corn, their white corn, and they make mush, and they actually feed the masks. And the people wear the masks that are the caregivers or caretakers of these masks. There's several stories around Ted Williams and the mask. The one is very unfortunate story. His daughter got hit by a car. It was just in the stages of Ted's journey through this experience that he didn't realize what he had done. It was a project for his daughter's social studies class at school, and Ted decided, well, he's an artsy kind of guy, and he says, I'll just make her a mask. Well, it was okay to make the mask, but Ted cut his hair, and he put human hair on the mask. That's one of the criteria that if you use other types of hair, it's okay, but if you use human hair, then the mask comes alive. And Ted learned the hard way because his daughter got hit by a car and she was killed on her way to school. It never left Ted throughout his life here, and he took that guilt so deep, and he kept it in a sacred way to share with people, to say this is a very sacred area of life. And he didn't get bitter, but he wanted people to understand through his experience that this is very serious type of element to get involved with. And you need to do enough resource study with the people who are members in those societies. And in order for you to be accepted, you have to, again, display certain characteristics, certain ways of saying, here's somebody who can connect the dots and they need minimal help. So we like people like that to come into these societies, and they will work with whoever it is, not making a mistake like putting your own hair on a mask. And that was just something that Ted had no intention on ever having anything like that happen. And when the medicine people talked to him and they said, Ted, we thought you knew. We would never suspect that you would have put your own hair or human hair on a mask, because that's what makes these things come to life, along with those other ceremonies. So those are experiences that when we hear them, it almost takes events like that for us to have the teaching or the lesson imprinted so strongly on us that we will say, caution is best used when we get into certain areas where we're not certain about these things. And even if we do know, we should probably have some consultation so that we have other people to confer with that will say, that seems like, and they would offer their assistance to say, let's do a ceremony just to make sure that what you're going to do will not bring any harmful consequences to anyone else.
And how would Ted have known? Apparently, they expected him to know, but he really didn't, and then he blamed himself for this mistake. But I mean, this whole concept around these living entities, these masks, is so foreign to the white culture, for example, of which I'm a part. I mean, it's like to think of these things as living. It's a bit tough to wrap your mind around, but yet at the same time, I mean, in the native culture and what you're describing, these things can have very powerful, very deleterious effects. I'm sure you see me struggling with this. It's like, how do you come to terms with that these masks can have an effect on somebody's life or death?
And, those are the types of things that when I hear people who are native, but then they let the other human part of them say, well, let's unleash that on these people over here because they're causing so much trouble. And you see, that's not what they were meant for. They were not designed to unleash their element on other human beings. And yet within the realm of what we say the duality, they were provided to the native people to say, work with these entities, work with these beings, and they will protect you. They will help you. But they're not to be abused or misused when you unleash their powers or their involvement in disrupting other lives because we don't agree with what that other life might be doing. Those are part of the lessons that all of us learn from. And this is what it's here for. But it's not here for us to say, well, I got the bigger mask. I got the one that can overrun and undermine all of these other things. Because now you're taking on the mentality that says, geez, those people, might is right. And you start to say, that's not how the concepts of life are demonstrated or show us that this is how life should be shared and used amongst all of us. So those false face stories, when I've heard them, and there's some really incredible, beautiful ones. There was a man named Norton Rickard up on Tuscarora, and he grew all the traditional corns of the native people. And there was a lady down on one of the other reservations on Cattaraugus, and she knew that he grew the best corn. It was, in fact, his corn was used and still is used today in all of the ceremonies for making the mush and feeding the false faces. So this lady asked him if he had any extra corn, and he said, sure, how many do you want? And she said, well, bring me 12 bushels. Well, they make it into a braid, and each braid is probably about 8 to 10 feet long, and it's equivalent to a bushel. So he brought these braids of corn down to her, and he said, I'm going to go deliver. He left his wife with the lady at her house. He said, I'm going to go deliver the other corn to these other people that ordered it. Well, he took a few extra braids with him, and when he got back to the lady's house, he said no one wanted the extra braids of corn. He asked her if she wanted them, and she said yes. Well, when he first arrived there, and he had the truck full, he took what she ordered initially in, and on his way back, he had to walk through the kitchen, and it had a little soffit that stuck down from the rest of the ceiling. And as he's carrying in these braids of corn, he started to notice that on this soffit there were all of these masks. He counted 13 masks. And he started walking really slow and looking up at them. He said because they were so beautiful. He said he had never seen masks that looked as so incredible as these masks did. So he started walking really slow and looking at each one closely to get all the detail from it. And then he realized he had spent too much time back there. And he walked a little quicker, and he put the corn back. So when he came back to the house, he had left his wife there with this woman, and he told her, he says, I have the leftover corn. Do you want it? And she said, sure, put it back with the rest of them. So he wanted to take another walk back to see those masks again, and he had the corn over his shoulder, and he's walking back, and he looks. There's no mask. The wall is completely clear.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, he walks back and he puts the corn in there. He doesn't say anything to the lady that owned the house. But when he gets in the truck, he talks to his wife and he says, oh, you must have been really busy with the lady. And she said, what are you talking about? He said, well, all the masks were taken down. They were gone. They weren't in the back. She says, I don't know what you're saying. He says, well, when I went back there the first time, these masks were all there. There were 13 of them. And he says, you must have been busy helping the lady take the mask down. She said, no, we stayed in the living room the whole time you were gone. And then it hit him, and he realized they were honoring him for bringing the corn to feed them. And these were, each mask was, false face was representing each lunar month of the year. And when he made the connection, he called his mother. He didn't even wait till he got home. He called his mother, and she told him, she says, are you kidding me? She told him, she says, you are so blessed and so fortunate to have witnessed. They don't show themselves to just anybody. And she said, because you've dedicated your life to raising that corn and supplying this for the ceremony, she said, they gifted you with the ability for you to see them briefly. And he told me the story. He'd cry when he'd tell me the story. It was so powerful, recounting what he had experienced with that. So these are the things that it shows us, that when we dedicate our lives to doing things that are supportive and helpful with these other components, these other parts of the culture, that there are gifts, there are rewards that they will share with you. And he told me that story, and I said, man, Norton, that is awesome. because most people, we go through life journeying, hoping to have a glimpse or some experience like this that might say, wow, we must have arrived at, I must have achieved something in this life because I've been given this opportunity to share with something so sacred. And I mean, that's what, it brought tears to him every time he would tell that story, because he said, I'm just so humbled and honored to be able to provide the corn for these events and for this ceremony. So, you know, you hear the other sides of the stories. It's just, I guess it's a lot like the little people. We're in duality, but these things of the mask, like Ted's story being as tragic as that was, yet you hear this other story and you go, wow, it is just incredible. So that we do see the spectrum, the whole part of life that says, when you think that you've seen it all, just wait. There are more experiences for you. But you have to hold that space. You have to maintain that. The things that are attracted to the spiritual or to the sacred, you have to be able to hold that space and say, I know that opportunity. I know that time is coming. It's not far away. And it's just waiting and watching and providing that environment where it wants to come in close and then let you see what this life is about. And you say, and after that, there's even more. It just never ends, which is so incredibly fascinating to me. And that's why I'm saying that the whole experience of meeting Mad Bear, but having an opportunity to spend time with him. In fact, you saw early in the book there the photo from Dharamsala. We were on the Dalai Lama's steps of the temple in Dharamsala, and at the time I thought, wow, it was a really cool trip. Now I look back at it and I'm going, what an incredible journey to have traveled halfway around the world to spend an afternoon at the Dalai Lama's temple and just see how this life just keeps developing and unfolding and providing us with these incredible experiences that have meaningful substance, that has something that we can connect to and say, wow, was I fortunate? Man, that is an incredible experience. And not just because it's the Dalai Lama, but because it was the Dalai Lama and Mad Bear and Dhani. And you say, what an incredible thing that you get to see this, experience it, and then say, now I know why the doors and the opportunities have opened up to me. Because the journey, even though it feels as if it's just beginning, it is just beginning, because there is so much more. When I see and when I think about what I've already experienced, and I'm going, there's more. I know there's more. And the more just keeps coming, and it keeps unfolding. And I know we have some future projects in the works that will provide even more than what we already have.
And that gives us all something to look forward to, I hope, with another set of books, or, again, more of your oral tradition being put down on paper so we can all share in this. I mean, certainly reading your book was wonderful, and also seeing the photograph of you and Mad Bear, and Dhani, who I studied with for years, so many years ago. It just brought back wonderful memories for me, even seeing that photograph. So again, you're very blessed in your life to have these experiences. And Mad Bear being who he was, my goodness, that's an honor that you'll carry forever and ever.
Yeah, Mad Bear, out of all of the people who I've had an opportunity to share time with and learn from, he's the only one that came back to me after he passed. And it was about 2 days after he had passed. I just sat up and woke up in the middle of the night, and I looked across the room. I lived up in another town outside of Buffalo, but I looked across the room, and there was a street light that some of that light had come through the window. And I looked over by the door, and there was Mad Bear. He was standing with this incredible big smile on his face. And it only lasted maybe 10 seconds, and then he faded. And the next morning, I get a call from Rolling Thunder, and he says to me, "Your buddy was here last night." And I said, "Cool." I said, "He was here too." I said, "I saw him." Mad Bear is the only one that has ever done that, at least in my case, with the acquaintances that I've had. So far, he's the only one that has done that, where he came back and just gave this kind of a hello and thank you, my friend, and I'm on my way. And it was just a great thing to see and know that we will and can stay connected to this other part of life that sometimes it can be spooky and it sometimes can be uncertain, but it's confirmation for me that there is much, much more for us. And it's our job just to treat these things in the respectful and sacred way and share with them.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, one thing, I have to ask you this because Mad Bear has made an appearance, and he wants you to talk a little bit about tobacco. We have a few minutes left, and he said it's very important that you bring something to our consciousness here about the sacredness of tobacco.
You nailed it again. Mad Bear and tobacco were, and that was, like I said earlier, about a little pinch or dropping a little tobacco somewhere. I asked Mad Bear, I said, out of all the plants that are available to us, why tobacco? And he said, you heard long, long ago that there was a cleansing of the planet. And it wasn't even so much the planet, but it was regional. It was large enough area. He said that it was cleansed by water. I said, yeah, I remember stories like that being told. And he said, well, it happened for some of our people. And he said, in the cleanup process, he said, as they were beginning to scrub away and wash away the silt and the mud, he said, a few days into the cleanup, he said, little sprouts started coming up through the silt. And when it was noticed, they sent word out amongst the villagers, and they told the medicine people, and the medicine people came down, and they told everyone to stop cleaning. And then they came to this plant that was coming up through the silt. And the medicine people, they honored it, but they prayed, and they stood around it, and they said, because this is the first plant to return to us after a cleansing through water. They said this plant will be used when we want to ask for help or honor people who are sick, or we want to communicate with these other things or make an offering for collecting medicine. He said the medicine people told all of the people from this day forward, this plant will be used as our offering to communicate back to, and when we burn it, we ask that smoke to go back to the Creator, that we are asking all of the entities between here and the Creator to assist or hear us, to assist with some of the dilemmas and troubles that we get into in this life. So the sacred tobacco is used only in situation for the greatness of life. So if we have friends that are ill, if we have someone that needs a medicine, we will take that medicine, that tobacco, we will make the offering to the plants that are out there that need to be used. It can be used. Mad Bear used to use it for doing readings. They would sprinkle a little bit of that on the water, and he would read the tobacco leaves in the water. They burn it. So you see, it has so many uses, but it was the plant that we were told that we would use to access these places where this help resides, and it will help us. And that is the use for the sacred tobacco.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Now Mad Bear won't be mad at me because I brought it up. So this has been a wonderful, wonderful 2 hours, and I just can't believe we've come to the end so quickly. It feels like we just started this conversation.
You're right.
Good.
You ladies did a great job. Thank you for having, and we wish everyone in the audience the best. We want to help everyone that we can and have a great journey in this life.
Thank you.
Well, again, thank you so much, both of you gentlemen, for coming on the show. And please keep us posted with any new books and things that you have in the works. We'd love to have you back and talking about any new projects and sharing this wonderful information with our audience. So keep in touch. Please keep us posted.
Will do.
And everyone find their book, Iroquois Supernatural, on Amazon.com. This has been a great show, Patricia.
It has been wonderful, just wonderful. I am going to have very happy dreams tonight thinking about Mad Bear, who I have the utmost respect for, and also Rolling Thunder, who I had the chance to meet years ago, and Haundenosaunee, again, all really beautiful medicine people who live what's in their heart.
Amazing, amazing, amazing stories. And I hope everyone goes out and buys their book.
It's a great book.
Thank you. It is.
Iroquois Supernatural on Amazon.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight.
Yes, thank you. We'll be back next week with Timothy Wiley talking about the fallen angels.
Popular guest. Angels, my favorite subject. So.
Yes, and now you'll get a chance to interview Timothy. So this will be your last show, I'm sad to say, but it will be a great one.
It will. Well, good night, Patricia.
Good night, Helene, and good night, everybody. Have a beautiful tomorrow.